Hello. Here at Southwestern Adventist University, everyone has a story to tell. Students and faculty alike have tales of love, hardship, the miraculous, sometimes the strange, and everything in between. Today, we are sharing the story of a student from the ESL program who underwent trials and tribulations to leave her home country of Argentina to make it to Hawaii and ultimately here. Right now, you're listening to Humans of Southwestern. Hello, my name is Gadiel Soto Maldonado. Today, I am going to talk to the professor of the ESL program at Southwestern Adventist University and an ESL student who will share her incredible story. First, we have Miss Monica, the professor of the ESL program, answering some questions. Hello, Miss Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica Kovarch Gonzalez, and I'm the ESL director at Southwestern Adventist University.
How long have you been teaching the ESL program?
I've been teaching for 15 years, a little break in between.
From what countries are your students?
We receive students from all over the world, from countries such as Puerto Rico, Angola, Brazil, Korea, Japan, Russia, Ukraine, Mexico, and many of the South American countries.
Do you have to use different teaching styles for the various cultures your students come from?
Well, the basic method is the same. It's good to have a knowledge. When I was doing my master's degree, I had to study several different languages. So I have knowledge of their grammar structures, their typical errors, how I can help them best. But the basic method is the same for all of them. We teach only in English, and so it's English from day one. We use pictures, body language, examples, and the students are able to understand and to progress.
What advice would you give to students who are interested in joining the ESL program?
Well, number one is apply to Southwestern. We have a wonderful program. We're here to help you. I would say don't be scared. The important thing is to start and to not give up, to keep going.
Thank you for your responses. Now we will hear from our next guest, Genesis, a student from the ESL program here at Southwestern Adventist University. Genesis, can you share your story about how you came here to study English?
Me llamo Génesis Colalillo. Nací en New Jersey, Estados Unidos. Cuando tenía apenas un año y medio.
My name is Genesis Colalillo. I was born in the state of New Jersey in the USA. When I was barely 1.5, my family decided to return to Argentina, first to Mendoza, then to the countryside in Buenos Aires. I come from a humble, hardworking family. My parents lived a few years in the United States, but after the fall of the Twin Towers, they returned to Mendoza. There, they made some bad investments and lost everything. That is why we ended up moving to Buenos Aires with my grandparents.
I imagine that it was a hard time for your family.
It was a difficult time, but it was filled with love, because in spite of everything, we were together. For me, that was always the most important. At the time, every penny went towards food. My mother used every leaf in the garden to cook. My father started to work in the field, even though he didn't know how. My mom did many things to keep us going. She cleaned houses, sold eggs, kneaded pasta, made candy, and taught English classes. Eventually, she entered the world of cosmetics, and through a lot of effort, began to study cosmetology. When I was around 12 years old, Fran, my brother of the heart, became part of our family. His arrival taught us one of the most important lessons: gratitude. Shortly after, my mother opened her own beauty salon, while my father began to prosper, working in the fields. Now I know that I am a fighter, an entrepreneur, and a multifaceted woman because I come from a mother and a father who personify those qualities. But all of that started much earlier, when I was barely 9 years old. At that early age, I knocked on doors selling raffle tickets and women's products. That determination that I had as a child marked the beginning of the journey of who I would become, a woman who is not deterred and learns from each step. At the age of 15, we moved to the town of Alberti in Buenos Aires. There, I went to school, a place where I always felt like a fish out of water. At 17, I moved back to Mendoza and began studying political science at the nearby university. I did not have a single peso to pay the train fare. I was underage and did not have any documents. My legal residency in Argentina is a different story altogether. My only work experience was selling items in my hometown. I managed. I would grab my clothes and I'd go to a nearby plaza to hold a fair. Or on weekends, I would wake up at 4:30 a.m. and make bread rolls that I sold door to door.
I see. And how did your studies go?
It was a year with difficult moments. I felt lonely, but I loved what I was studying. Unfortunately, that same year, I had to drop out as a result of the university having a xenophobic director who refused to grant me my certificate of completion on time, prohibiting me from taking my final exams. The following year, I tried to start my studies again, but the pandemic hit. I decided to return to the town in Buenos Aires, and like that, so did my dream of going to university. Once again, I felt lost and like a failure. I lived with my parents for 6 months and started a business selling jewelry, which allowed me to move out by myself when I was 19. In no time, I opened a liquor store, started a degree in digital marketing, frequently exercised, and ate healthy foods. My focus was my physical, mental, and financial growth. That all changed when I met a narcissistic, manipulative abuser. I managed to quickly get out of that relationship, but the experience along with the criminal case left me with trauma. It was a difficult stage in my life, but my focus was on getting myself back on my feet. I went to therapy, relied on my family, and started to exercise again. I also began to work as a receptionist at my mother's beauty salon, as a babysitter, as a waitress at a bar, and as a community manager. Eventually, boom. It occurred to me to get out of the country.
And where did you end up going?
Shortly afterwards, an opportunity for me to go to Hawaii came. So in November 2023, at the age of 21, I left Argentina by myself. At the airport, I met Graciela Japas. I was saying my goodbyes to my family, and she overheard our conversation. We began to chat with her and shared our story. During the conversation, Graciela said that she wanted to help me with my studies and prayed with us before my flight. Fortunately, both of us were heading to Dallas. When we arrived, she helped me navigate the airport and reach my next flight to Hawaii. Before we parted ways, we exchanged phone numbers, and she gave me a small Bible and $100, which I sent to my family when I arrived in Hawaii. I did not have any savings since all of my earnings went to cover rent, taxes, and food. When I arrived in Hawaii, I started working. Once I boarded the plane, I opened the Bible that Graciela gave me on a random page, and the first verse I read was Psalm 121, verse 8. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. At a food truck, as a babysitter for the person I was staying with, and at their ex's restaurant. The person let me live at their house, and I paid rent. I had high hopes that in less than 3 days were crushed. The person that agreed to house me forced me to cook, wash dishes, do the laundry, and work more hours than what we initially agreed upon. They made passive-aggressive comments towards me that eventually turned into verbal abuse. That first month, I decided to let them deduct the cost of the plane ticket and my rent, so I ended up not earning anything. By the second month, coexistence became unbearable. I was not receiving money from any of the jobs I was working, I barely ate, and I was mistreated. I felt humiliated, alone, and lost.
So what did you do?
I was in a place distinct from what I knew. I did not have any money, I knew nobody, and my phone did not work at all, except for WhatsApp, and I did not speak English. On the 29th of December, I accompanied that person to a nearby town to take their kids to get ice cream. There, I met Angela, a Colombian woman, who saw me and, without knowing who I was, gave me a hug and her number on WhatsApp. The following day, tensions came to an all-time high. The person who was housing me ordered me to clean all the rooms in the house. When I refused, she began to yell at me and insult me. At that point, I decided that I had to leave. Nothing was in my favor, but I convinced myself that my good heart and faith in God were more than enough. I went to the beach and began to converse with God. I realized that I had to humble myself and accept that I did not have a true purpose. And everything that I have gone through is a consequence of that. I did not have a clear idea of what kind of partner I wanted, what kind of friends I wanted, how I wanted to make a living, who I wanted to be, or what I wanted to give back to the world. I asked God, what is the purpose of my life? I had goals, but I did not know what my purpose for living was, what my mission in this world was. I asked Him to guide me and put in my path the people and opportunities that would lead me to the purpose that He had for me. I asked for wisdom to make the right choices, discipline so I would not give up, protection so I would not suffer harm, and to become closer to Him. I returned to my room and sent a text to Angela, the woman from the ice cream shop, the only person I knew on the island. I asked for her help in finding a job and a place to stay. She agreed to help me. I also sent a text to Graciela, the woman from the airport, explaining my situation. Graciela was willing to help me move to Texas with her and help me economically with my studies and the residency papers for my parents to live in the U.S. Honestly, all of this sounded too good to be true, so I was afraid. I went to bed trusting everything in God's hands. The next day, I had a chat with the person that I was living with and asked for time until my next rent payment. I had 10 days. They left and returned at night with some friends to have a few drinks. I was there with them and acted as if nothing was happening. The following morning, Angela sent me a text mentioning that the previous night I had met her friend Rosemary, who wanted to help me out. Angela explained that Rosemary wanted to talk to me on New Year's Eve to see how she could help me, and so it was. That same week, Rosemary put me in contact with Raisa, a friend of hers who lived in the city. Raisa worked as a teacher and lived alone with her son. The deal was that I would help around the house and help take care of her kid. In exchange, I would pay rent and be able to work during my free time to save up some money. I had found a new home. On the 9th of January, I grabbed my suitcase and left for the nearest town, where Rosemary was going to pick me up and take me to Raisa's place. By that time, I had begun to work cleaning the house of a family that treated me with much love and paid me well. I was able to buy a new phone and a new chip. Raisa managed to get me an interview with the director of the school she worked at, and I was hired on the spot to work with young children who were on the autism spectrum. I was truly happy. I also began to work washing dishes at a Mexican restaurant, and to save money, rather than pay for the bus fare, I walked 1 hour to get there and another hour to walk back home. I left that job the following month because the owner harassed me and had not paid me in a month and a half. But at the time, my character was different. I quit and told them, tomorrow, I'll come back for my check. And so it was. Afterwards, I worked whatever odd job I could get, even if it was just for a day. I helped with birthday parties, mowed lawns, and worked at a flower shop, an Italian food stand, and an empanada stand. I tried to practice English at all of my jobs. I would read every poster I came across and watch videos on YouTube. I even went to a school to learn, but it was difficult with my work hours. At least I was starting to be able to communicate. By this point, I had been living with Raisa for almost 2 months. My next step was to become independent and start the process for my parents' residency. I was still a long way from achieving that, seeing as presenting the case for both of my parents would cost me more than $1,000, and I still did not have the minimum amount of required years living in the U.S. to solicit bringing my parents over. So I needed a sponsor, and I had faith that someone would appear. So I began to look for a place for myself. Unfortunately, potential locations did not provide the deposit price, asked for 2 months' payments in advance, or were simply too expensive. It did not help that nobody wanted to rent to a girl who had no savings or references of having rented before. I began to lose hope. Then I remembered the help that Graciela offered, but I was hesitant. Her offer sounded too good to be true, and I only met her at the airport. I decided to pray to God. I said, Father, the purpose you have for me might be in this direction, but I'm scared. Please, I need you to send me a sign.
Did you receive a sign?
It had been 2 months since I talked to Graciela, but the next morning I had a text from her, although I still had my reservations. During that same week, someone knocked on the door, a Vietnamese woman named Kim. She came looking for a vacuum that she had let Raisa borrow. I sat down while they talked at the door. I overheard Raisa talking about me, saying that I was very hardworking and that I was looking for my own place to stay. Kim mentioned that she was renting out a room, and right then I stood up and asked her what the price was. Kim said that we could talk about that later. She was in a hurry, so I asked for her contact information. As soon as she left, we talked through text, and Kim said that I could see the room and discuss the price.
Were you able to see the room that was being offered?
Later that week, I saw the room. Kim explained that the bathroom and kitchen were shared, but that she was not going to charge me an initial deposit nor a month's payment in advance. She just wanted to help me get stable. On the 28th of April, I moved. I was both happy and grateful. Kim basically became a grandmother to me. She had a very noble heart, and we had very interesting conversations. I wanted a second job, so the next day I searched and took the first job I found working in the kitchen of a bar. There I met Eloy, an Argentinian man who had been living in the U.S. for some years. He taught me what I needed to know about taking care of the kitchen, and by the end of the month, he quit. Now I could pay my own rent, groceries for the whole week, and the bus fare. With the money I had left, I invested in marketing courses. In May, I turned 22 years old, my first birthday alone and outside of Argentina. That same month, my job at the bar had made me exhausted. Everybody who worked there ended up quitting or getting fired, leaving me to do everything with the help of my manager. I had to manage everything in the kitchen, the oven, the stove, fryer, and dishwasher. Near the end of the month, I burned my face and arm with hot oil. After that, I had enough. I wanted to work at a better place, so I thought of a hotel, but I did not have any experience.
And did you find a better job?
Later that week, I was at the beach in Waikiki when I received a call from Eloy, the Argentinian man from the bar. He asked if I was looking for a job, and obviously I said yes. He told me he started working in the kitchen of a hotel in Waikiki that was opening soon, and wondered if I was interested. So I went to the hotel and talked to one of the chefs, who asked if I was available for an interview the next day. They hired me, and I quit my job at the bar. I was happy. A month later, I bought a motorcycle and learned how to use it. I had 2 jobs that I liked. I started to work out again and eat healthy. I took my online courses, and I had more free time to enjoy the island.
You have talked about your second job, but what about your job at the school? How was that going?
Working at the school, I learned the Montessori method of education, and I connected with the children in a unique way. I have always believed that the first years of life are really important and that the world needs more people who care for kids and know how to interact with them. That is when I realized that God put me in this job for a reason and that He was answering my prayer from January. What is my purpose? Everything was coming together except my love life. I was in a toxic relationship that started to affect my life and was not helping me grow. In July, a string of unfortunate events occurred. One day, as I was walking to the gym, I decided to withdraw money from the bank. I left my purse in a locker, and when I was done exercising, I realized someone had stolen the money. I also had my first motor accident. Luckily, it was nothing major. The following month, someone stole my motorcycle. That same day, I found a check that I had not cashed in. So with the money, I bought a new motorcycle, the worst purchase of my life. The motorcycle would frequently leave me stranded, and I had another accident. Again, it was nothing major, but I was starting to be in a bad mood. My relationship had my self-esteem at an all-time low, and I did not understand why I could not just leave. On the 17th of September, it was a beautiful day, so I decided to go up on a mountain to take my online courses. While up there, I went to the bathroom. Not even 10 minutes had passed, and when I came back, both my motorcycle and my purse were missing. I started crying out of frustration when a group of kids asked me what happened. I told them my situation, and they said that they saw a motorcycle in the middle of the road not that far ahead. It was my motorcycle, so I went home happy. The next day, I woke up at 5 a.m. to go to work at the school. It did not stop raining. It was an hour-long drive, and on the way, I had an accident. Both the police and the ambulance arrived on the scene. I only had a few scrapes on my foot, leg, and arm, although I could not walk because of the pain. The medics bandaged my leg, and I continued on my way home to school. From there, other employees took me back home. The following morning, I went to work at the hotel, even though my leg was in pain. When my boss saw me, he sent me back home. My leg was swollen and red from the knee all the way to my foot. I went to the hospital where the doctor prescribed me medicine and rest. A few days had passed, and my leg only worsened. In fact, it started turning yellow. The scrapes had gotten infected, so I returned to the hospital where I was admitted for a day. By the time I was able to make it to the bus stop, it was already night. There were 2 Chinese men, a man and a young boy. They saw me with my crutches and helped me get home. An hour later, they brought me food. The next few days, they would come back to check up on me and take me to have dinner with their family. Over time, I got to know the rest of the group, who eventually became my family, my Chinese family. A month had passed since my leg initially got infected, and it still did not get better. I could not work, I could barely move, and I felt alone. I had Kim and my Chinese friends, but what I really needed was my family. That was when I had my breaking point. I knew with all honesty that I had to humble myself before God. I sat down on the floor as best as I could and opened up my heart to Him. I begged forgiveness for things that I had never even dared to remember. I assumed that I had no strength and that I did not know how to lead my life. I did not want to be a rebel in His eyes. I asked for mercy. I wanted Him to guide my steps. I wanted to leave my past, present, and future in his hands because no one but him knew my heart and intentions. Lastly, I asked for forgiveness because a few months prior, he had sent me a sign. He answered my prayer and I did not follow him. I told God that I was still scared to go forward with this decision, but if going to Texas with Graciela was within his plan, I would do it. So I asked for one last sign. The next day, I was sitting on the balcony, my legs still in bandages, when someone passing by asked me what happened. I told them about my motorcycle accident, and the person told me that they had gone through a similar accident with the same injury I had. They advised me to dunk my leg in a mixture of water with lemon, ginger, and salt for 20 minutes each day. After they left, I did exactly what they recommended. That night, I received a call from Graciela. It had been a few months since I last heard from her, but one day after my prayer, God answered. I honestly could not believe what was going on. She asked me how I was, and crying, I told her everything that had happened to me. She then asked me, "Do you want to come to Texas?" I said, "Yes." It was October, and we agreed that I would move on December 3rd.
So it seemed that everything in your life was coming together, right?
A month had gone by, and my leg got better. I returned to work and began to enjoy more of the island, the beaches, the evenings, the flowers, the mountains, the music, and everything else that I could enjoy. I started preparing to move, and on November 28th, I became ill. I vomited for 2 days, and my first instinct was to take a pregnancy test. The result came back positive. I was shocked. Something inside me already knew it, and when I saw the positive result, it confirmed what my intuition had been whispering. It was there, a tiny heartbeat within me. I trembled with fear and uncertainty, not knowing what was going to happen. I was 3 days away from moving to Texas. My life was about to change, and suddenly it changed even more. But in the midst of the shock, something took hold within me. I was choosing my son, choosing to take care of him, to protect him, and I was going to give my best. Although I was the one giving him life in my womb, he was the one who gave me purpose to live it. That day, I felt blessed that he chose me as his mother. I called Graciela, not knowing if she would still be willing to offer me her help, but she told me that now, more than ever, she supported me. Graciela Japas and her husband, Carlos Japas, have been angels in my life. I have been in Texas for 5 months now. I arrived focused and excited because I was coming to study English. Naive, I did not come just to study English. I came to learn the rules of life. I came to get closer to God, and I came to learn from everyone, from everything, and from myself. And this is always the case for me, for everyone. But my awakening happened now. No experience gives you only what you expect. It is up to you to be alive and take advantage of it. Everyone in life is a teacher and a student. Everything comes to teach us more than what we perceive on the surface. God always had a purpose for me, and He brought me here so I could follow Him. I have already climbed some steps in the ladder of my life, but I needed God's help to continue. And I know with absolute certainty that the summit He has prepared is precious.
Thank you for sharing your story, Genesis. Thank you for listening to Humans of Southwestern, and we hope you'll tune in next time. If you or anyone you know is interested in the ESL program here at Southwestern Adventist University, you can go online to swau.edu/academics/ESL or call the following number, 817-202-6794.